The observation deck of Habitat Ring 7 offered the best view in human space. Nikolai Petrov pressed his palm against the reinforced transparasteel, watching the star Elner 9 burn at the heart of humanity's greatest achievement. The Dyson sphere stretched away in all directions, a perfect shell of interconnected collectors and habitats that completely enclosed the G-type star, capturing every photon of its energy. Magnificent, isn't it? Dr. Sarah Chun joined him at the viewport, her reflection ghost-like in the transparent wall. As the project's chief energy systems coordinator, she had spent the last 15 years of her life making this moment possible. Nikolai nodded, though his engineer's mind was already cataloging the minor imperfections only he could see. A slight irregularity in panel section 7,439,221. A microscopic misalignment in the gravitational stabilizers of collector array gamma 7. These flaws would have driven him to madness 20 years ago when construction began. Now, with the sphere finally complete, they seemed almost endearing. The energy output readings are beyond our most optimistic projections, Sarah continued, consulting the holographic display floating beside her wrist. We're capturing 3.8 times 10 to the power of 26 watts continuously. Enough to power Earth's entire civilization for the next million years. In 13 colonial worlds, Nikolai added. Don't forget the colonies. The thought of those distant worlds, connected to this sphere by quantum-entangled power transmission arrays, filled him with profound satisfaction. Humanity's energy crisis was over. Forever. No more wars over resources. No more rationing. No more choosing between expansion and sustainability. The sphere around Elner 9 had solved everything. Nikolai's personal communicator chirped with an incoming priority message. The holographic interface materialized before his eyes, showing the concerned face of Dr. Marcus Webb, the sphere's head of operations. Nikolai, we need you in Central Command immediately. We're seeing some anomalies in the power distribution grid. The word anomalies sent a chill down Nikolai's spine. In engineering, anomalies were either trivial mistakes or catastrophic problems. There was rarely anything in between. What kind of anomalies? Nikolai asked, already moving toward the transit tube. Power fluctuations. Nothing major, but they're following a pattern we can't explain. And Nikolai. Marcus paused, his expression troubled. The fluctuations seemed to be growing stronger. Central Command occupied the geometric center of the sphere, a massive facility built into the collection array's central hub. As Nikolai emerged from the transit tube, he was struck by the controlled urgency of the scene. Technicians hunched over workstations, their faces illuminated by scrolling data streams. The main holographic display dominated the chamber, showing a real-time energy flow diagram of the entire sphere. Marcus Webb stood before the display, his silver hair catching the light from the hologram. At 68, he was the oldest member of the sphere's permanent staff, a veteran of the early colonial expansion who had volunteered for the Elner 9 project despite having a comfortable retirement waiting for him on Mars. Show me, Nikolai said without preamble. Marcus gestured to the hologram, and the image zoomed in on a section of the sphere's outer shell. It started 12 hours ago in collection array Alpha 14. A brief power fluctuation, maybe 0.3% below normal output. We thought it was a simple malfunction. But it wasn't, Nikolai guessed. No, the fluctuation moved. Look at this. The hologram shifted to show a time-lapse of the last 12 hours. Nikolai watched as a small dark spot appeared in array Alpha 14, then slowly migrated to the adjacent array. As it moved, the affected areas showed decreased power output. It's like something is consuming the energy, Marcus said, but there's nothing there. No equipment malfunctions. No physical obstruction. The collection panels are functioning perfectly. Nikolai studied the data streams flowing beside the hologram. Energy collection rates, quantum field fluctuations, gravitational measurements, electromagnetic spectra. Everything looked normal except for that slowly spreading dark spot. Current power loss? He asked. 0.8% and climbing. At this rate, we'll hit 1% within 6 hours. 1% didn't sound like much, but Nikolai quickly calculated the actual numbers. 1% of the sphere's total output was still 3.8 times 10 to the power of 24 watts. Enough energy to power a small planet simply vanishing into space. Have you informed Earth? Nikolai asked. Marcus shook his head. Not yet. I wanted to understand what we're dealing with first. This is our first week of full operation, Nikolai. If we report a major problem now. Nikolai understood. The political implications were staggering. The Eleanor 9 project had consumed 40% of humanity's total resources for 2 decades. Entire planets had been strip-mined for materials. 3 generations of children had grown up with stories of the Great Sphere that would solve all their problems. If it failed now, the social and economic chaos would be unprecedented. Run a full diagnostic on the affected areas, Nikolai ordered. I want maintenance drones examining every centimeter of those collection panels. Physical inspection, not just sensor sweeps. Already in progress, said Dr. Lisa Park, the Sphere's chief systems analyst. She looked up from her workstation, her youthful face lined with stress. But Nikolai, the drones aren't finding anything wrong. It's like the energy is just disappearing. Energy doesn't just disappear, Nikolai said firmly. Conservation of energy is one of the fundamental laws of physics. If power is vanishing, it's going somewhere. We just need to find where. He moved to the central control station and began pulling up deeper diagnostic data. The sphere's collection mechanism was elegantly simple in principle. Each panel contained millions of photovoltaic converters that transformed stellar radiation into electrical energy. The energy was then channeled through a network of superconducting cables to the central distribution hub, where it could be stored, used locally, or transmitted to distant worlds via quantum entanglement. Every stage of the process was monitored by thousands of sensors. If energy was disappearing, the sensors should detect it. But they weren't. Marcus, I want you to expand the diagnostic sweep. Check every system we have. Power generation, transmission, storage, everything. If there's a leak in our system, we'll find it. And if there isn't? Marcus asked quietly. Nikolai didn't answer immediately. He was staring at the holographic display, watching the dark spot slowly expand across another collection array. There was something about its movement that bothered him. It wasn't random or chaotic like you would expect from a system malfunction. It moved with purpose, following the most efficient path through the collection grid. If there isn't, he finally said, then we're dealing with something outside our understanding of physics. 18 hours later, Nikolai hadn't slept. The situation had deteriorated with methodical precision. The power loss had increased to 2.1%, and the affected area now covered 12 collection arrays. More troubling, the rate of expansion was accelerating. It's not random, Dr. Park announced to the assembled team in Central Command. She gestured to the main display, which now showed a 3-dimensional map of the power drain. Look at the progression pattern. It's following the highest energy pathways through our collection grid. Nikolai studied the pattern, feeling a cold certainty settle in his stomach. It's learning. Learning. Marcus looked skeptical. Nikolai, it's an energy fluctuation, not intelligence. Is it? Nikolai pulled up a comparative analysis. Watch the progression speed. Day 1, 0.3% power loss over 12 hours. Day 2, 0.8% power loss over 6 hours. Today, 1.3% power loss over 4 hours. It's not just learning our system, it's optimizing its consumption. Dr. Chun, who had been monitoring communications from Earth, looked up from her station. We have another problem. The quantum transmission arrays are starting to show instabilities. Nothing major yet, but if this thing learns to follow our power streams, she'd need to finish. The quantum entanglement arrays were humanity's lifeline to the colonial worlds. If something could follow those energy streams back to Earth and the colonies, the consequences would be catastrophic. We need to consider severing the transmission links, Marcus said. Absolutely not, Nikolai replied sharply. 13 worlds depend on our power output. If we cut them off without warning, the deaths would number in the millions. Besides, severing the links might not stop this thing. It might just force it to find another way out of the sphere. Then what do you suggest? Nikolai was quiet for a long moment, studying the data streams. The entity, for he was now convinced they were dealing with some form of entity, had consumed energy equivalent to the output of 3 moderate-sized fusion reactors. Where was that energy going? Lisa, show me the gravitational measurements around the affected areas. Dr. Park's fingers danced across her interface, and new data appeared on the display. Gravitational fields are normal. No significant variations from baseline. Electromagnetic spectrum? Normal. Quantum field fluctuations? Normal. Everything's normal, Nikolai. Except for the missing energy. Nikolai felt the first stirrings of real fear. In his 43 years as an engineer, he had never encountered a problem that left no traces, no signatures, no evidence of its existence except for its effects. It was like trying to track a ghost. "I'm going out there," he announced. The command center fell silent. Marcus was the first to speak. "Nikolai, that's not necessary. Our remote sensors are useless. They're telling us everything is normal, while 2% of our total power output vanishes into space. I need to see the affected areas with my own eyes." "It could be dangerous," Dr. Chin protested. "We don't know what we're dealing with." "Which is exactly why I need to go. Something is feeding on our energy, and it's getting stronger. We need to understand it before it learns to leave the sphere." Marcus sighed. "If you're determined to do this, at least take a full survey team. And I want constant communication." "No team," Nikolai said. "Teams move slowly, and we don't have time. I'll take a maintenance pod and get close enough to the affected arrays to run direct scans." 30 minutes later, Nikolai was sealed inside Maintenance Pod 7, a small spacecraft designed for close-range inspection of the sphere's outer shell. The pod was essentially a flying sensor platform, equipped with every detection device humanity had developed. As he piloted the pod away from Central Command, Nikolai felt the familiar thrill of working in space. The sphere's interior was a vast hollow, 500 million kilometers across, with the star Elner, 9 burning at its center. The pod's radiation shielding automatically adjusted as he approached the affected collection arrays. "Pod 7 to Central Command." He spoke into his communicator. "Beginning detailed scan of array Alpha 19. "Copy that, Pod 7. We're monitoring your telemetry." Nikolai brought the pod to within 50 meters of the collection panels. At this distance, he could see the individual photovoltaic cells, each one a masterpiece of nanotechnology. They appear to be functioning perfectly. "Running full spectrum analysis," he reported, activating the pod sensor array. The data flowed across his displays. Electromagnetic radiation, normal. Particle density, normal. Gravitational field, normal. Energy output, 15% below projected levels. "Central Command, are you seeing this?" "We're seeing it, Pod 7. Everything looks normal except for the power output." Nikolai guided the pod along the array, following the edge of the affected zone. As he crossed the boundary between normal and affected panels, he noticed something odd. The transition wasn't gradual. It was sharp, almost like a defined edge. "I'm seeing a clear boundary between affected and unaffected areas," he reported. "It's like there's an invisible barrier. Can you define the barrier's parameters?" Nikolai activated the pod's most sensitive instruments, scanning for any anomaly that might explain the invisible boundary. For several minutes, he found nothing. Then, almost by accident, he tried a quantum state analyzer, a device designed to measure the fundamental properties of space-time itself. The readings made his blood run cold. "Central Command, I need you to confirm something. According to my quantum analyzer, the space around the affected panels is showing microdimensional distortions." There was a pause before Dr. Park's voice came through the communicator. "Nikolai, that's impossible. Our quantum sensors would have detected. Your quantum sensors aren't designed to look for dimensional distortions. They're looking for energy and matter. But what if we're dealing with something that exists partially outside our normal space-time?" The implications were staggering. If something from another dimension was feeding on their energy, it would explain why their sensors couldn't detect it directly. It would also explain how it could consume energy without producing any detectable waste or byproducts. "Pod 7, return to Central Command immediately." Marcus's voice was tight with tension. "Not yet. I'm getting readings that might explain." Nikolai's words were cut off as every alarm in the pod began sounding simultaneously. The pod's main display showed something that shouldn't have been possible. His energy reserves were dropping rapidly. "Central Command, I have an emergency. The pod's power systems are failing." "Pod 7, Get out of there now. Nikolai engaged the pod's emergency thrusters, but they responded sluggishly. Whatever was draining the collection arrays was now draining his pod as well. He watched helplessly as his power levels dropped from 100% to 80% to 60%. With growing desperation, he aimed the pod towards Central Command and pushed the thrusters to maximum. But it was like flying through thick liquid. Every meter of progress cost exponentially more energy. At 30% power, the pod's life support systems began shutting down to conserve energy. At 20%, the thrusters cut out entirely. Nikolai was drifting in space, 50 kilometers from Central Command, with 15 minutes of emergency power remaining. Central Command, I need immediate evacuation. Power systems have failed. Rescue pod is already en route. Pod 7. ETA 12 minutes. 12 minutes. Nikolai looked at his emergency power display. 11 minutes remaining. As he waited in the growing cold of the pod's dying systems, Nikolai realized something that chilled him more than the dropping temperature. Whatever was feeding on the sphere's energy had just demonstrated that it could affect objects outside the collection arrays. It was adapting, expanding its capabilities, and it had just tasted human technology. The rescue operation succeeded with 90 seconds of emergency power to spare. As Nikolai was transferred to Rescue Pod 14, he watched Maintenance Pod 7 drift away, completely drained of energy. Within hours, it would fall into Elner 9, adding its mass to the star that fed the sphere. Back in Central Command, the situation had deteriorated further. The power loss had reached 3.2%, and the affected area now covered 37 collection arrays. More troubling, several automated maintenance drones had suffered the same fate as Nikolai's pod. Complete power drain when they ventured too close to the affected areas. It's becoming more aggressive, Dr. Park reported. The energy drain rate has increased by 400% in the last 6 hours. Nikolai studied the progression data while medical staff checked him for radiation exposure. It's not becoming more aggressive. It's becoming more efficient. Every time it encounters one of our devices, it learns something new about our technology. Are you suggesting it's some kind of artificial intelligence? Marcus asked. No, this is something far older and more alien than any AI. Dr. Chun, I need you to run a deep scan of our historical databases. Look for any records of unexplained energy phenomena, especially around stars that have since gone dark. You think this has happened before? I think this entity has been feeding on stellar energy for a very long time. The question is, how many civilizations has it encountered? While Dr. Chun worked on the historical analysis, Nikolai turned his attention to a more immediate problem. The quantum transmission arrays were beginning to show signs of instability. If the entity learned to follow those power streams, it could spread beyond the sphere. Marcus, I need you to prepare contingency protocols for severing the quantum links. Nikolai, we've discussed this. The colonies will die if this thing reaches Earth. We need to be ready. Dr. Park looked up from her workstation. Nikolai, I'm seeing something new. The entity seems to be concentrating its activity around Quantum Array 7. Nikolai felt his heart skip. Quantum Array 7 was the primary transmission hub for the Earth connection, the most powerful quantum entanglement system ever built. It's testing the transmission system, he realized. It's trying to understand how our quantum links work. On the main display, they watched as the entity's influence spread across Array 7. The power drain was more focused here, more deliberate. Instead of the broad consumption pattern they had observed elsewhere, the entity was probing specific components of the quantum system. Power output from Array 7 is down to 60% and falling, Dr. Park reported. How long until the quantum link fails? Nikolai asked. At this rate? For hours. Nikolai made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. Sever the quantum link to Earth. Do it now. Nikolai, Dr. Chun protested. Earth is expecting their next power transmission in 2 hours. If we cut them off without warning, if we don't cut them off, they may face something infinitely worse than a power shortage. Marcus moved to the quantum control station. Are you absolutely certain about this? Nikolai watched the entity's probing pattern on the display. It was methodical, intelligent, purposeful. Do it. The quantum link to Earth severed with a sound like breaking glass. On the display, the The connection indicator changed from green to red. For the first time in 3 years, Earth was cut off from the sphere's power output. I'll take full responsibility for this decision, Nikolai said quietly. But his relief was short-lived. Instead of moving away from Array 7, the entity's activity intensified. It was no longer just probing the quantum system, it was consuming it entirely. Array 7 is going dark, Dr. Park announced. Complete power failure across all systems. On the display, they watched as Array 7 went black. But something else was happening. The quantum field distortions around the array were growing stronger, more coherent. It's not just consuming the energy, Dr. Chen said, her voice filled with dawning horror. It's learning how to manipulate quantum fields. Nikolai understood the implications immediately. If the entity could manipulate quantum fields, it could potentially create its own quantum links. Cutting the connection to Earth might have been pointless. We need to evacuate the sphere, he said. What? Marcus stared at him in disbelief. Whatever this thing is, it's learning too fast. Every system it encounters makes it more powerful. We need to get everyone off the sphere before it becomes something we can't control. Nikolai, there are 47,000 people on this sphere. Evacuation would take weeks. Then we'd better start now. But even as he spoke, Nikolai knew it might already be too late. The entity had consumed the equivalent of a small planet's energy output in just 3 days. It had learned to drain their technology and was now experimenting with quantum manipulation. And they were trapped inside a 500 million kilometer sphere with it. Dr. Chen's workstation chimed with an incoming analysis. Nikolai, I found something in the historical databases. 3-star systems in our records show unexplained stellar dimming over the past 5,000 years. In each case, the dimming followed the same pattern we're seeing here. What happened to those stars? That's the thing. We don't know. They just went dark. No supernova, no collapse. They simply stopped producing detectable energy. Nikolai felt a chill that had nothing to do with the command center's temperature. And the civilizations around those stars. No traces. No signals. No artifacts. No signs they ever existed. It's like they were completely erased. On the main display, the entity's influence continued to spread. It now covered 62 collection arrays and was approaching the sphere's first inhabited habitat ring. In a matter of hours, it would encounter its first human settlement. Nikolai realized they were facing something that had devoured entire civilizations. And now it was loose inside humanity's greatest achievement, learning about their technology, growing stronger with every passing hour. The evacuation order went out 30 minutes later, but Nikolai suspected they were already too late. The evacuation of Habitat Ring 12 proceeded with military efficiency born of desperation. 47,000 people couldn't be moved quickly, but the ring's automated systems could be shut down to deny the entity more technology to study. Nikolai stood in the Emergency Command Center, a backup facility built deep within the sphere's structural core. The main command center had been abandoned when the entity's influence reached within 50 kilometers, too close for safety. Ring 12 is now clear of all personnel, reported Captain Elena Rodriguez, the sphere's security chief. All non-essential systems have been powered down. And the entity? Nikolai asked. Dr. Park consulted her portable scanner. Still focused on the quantum array sections, but its influence is definitely expanding. We're now seeing power drain effects across 1,200 collection arrays. 1,200 arrays. Nikolai calculated quickly. That represented nearly 8% of the sphere's total power generation capacity. The entity was accelerating its consumption. There's something else, Dr. Park continued. The quantum field distortions around the consumed areas are becoming more complex. It's like the entity is building something. Building what? I don't know. But the pattern suggests some kind of structure. A framework built from quantum fields themselves. Nikolai studied the latest readings on his portable display. The entity's behavior had changed dramatically since it encountered the quantum transmission systems. Instead of simple consumption, it was now manipulating the fundamental forces it absorbed. Show me the progression pattern again, he requested. The holographic display materialized between them, showing the entity's spread across the sphere. What Nikolai saw made his blood run cold. It's not random expansion anymore, he said. Look at the pattern. It's following the sphere's primary power distribution network. Dr. Chun joined them, having finished coordinating the evacuation of Ring 15. Nikolai, I've been thinking about your dimensional displacement theory. If this entity exists partially outside our space-time, then it might experience cause and effect differently than we do. What do you mean? What if it's not learning about our technology sequentially? What if it can perceive the entire sphere's structure simultaneously, across multiple dimensional layers? The implications were staggering. If the entity could see the sphere's complete design from a higher dimensional perspective, then every defensive measure they devised would be anticipated. That would explain its efficiency, Nikolai mused. It's not studying our systems. It already knows how they work because it can see them from outside our normal space-time. Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent communication from Dr. Webb, who had volunteered to monitor the situation from Ring 7. Emergency command, we have a new development. The entity has made contact with the habitat ring. Nikolai's heart sank. Casualties? No, that's what's strange. It's not attacking the humans directly. It's studying them. Studying them how? Best I can tell, it's sampling their bioelectric fields. Very gently. People report feeling a slight, tingling sensation, like mild static electricity. But no one's been harmed. Nikolai exchanged glances with Dr. Chun. It's learning about biological energy systems. That's what I'm afraid of. Dr. Webb's voice was tight with tension. Nikolai, if this thing learns to metabolize biological energy. The sentence hung unfinished. Humans were essentially biological batteries, their nervous systems running on electrical impulses. If the entity learned to feed on bioelectricity, every living person on the sphere would become a potential food source. Marcus, begin immediate evacuation of all remaining habitat rings. Everyone off the sphere now. Nikolai, the evacuation fleet can't handle 47,000 people at once. We need at least, however long it takes. But get them started. Prioritize the children and elderly. As the evacuation orders went out, Nikolai turned his attention to a more fundamental problem. The entity was growing stronger and more sophisticated by the hour. Eventually, it would become powerful enough to escape the sphere entirely. When that happened, it would be free to spread across the galaxy, consuming stellar energy and civilizations with equal appetite. We need to find a way to communicate with it, he announced. The emergency command center fell silent. Captain Rodriguez was the first to speak. Communicate? Nikolai, this thing has consumed 8% of our power output and is studying our people like laboratory specimens. Because it doesn't understand us, Nikolai replied. Think about it from its perspective. It encounters a massive energy collection system around a star, exactly the kind of setup it's probably seen from other civilizations. It naturally begins feeding. Then it discovers the system is inhabited. You think it's curious about us? I think it's ancient beyond our comprehension, and we're the first civilization it's encountered that built our collection system differently. Most species probably build Dyson spheres as pure energy harvesting operations. We built ours as a living space. Dr. Chen nodded slowly. It's trying to understand why we're living inside our power collection system. Exactly. And until it understands, it will keep studying us. The question is, how do we establish meaningful communication with a multidimensional entity that exists partially outside space-time? Dr. Park looked up from her scanners. The quantum field manipulations. If it can build structures from quantum fields, maybe we can modulate those fields to create a communication medium. How? The quantum transmission arrays it consumed, it's still maintaining quantum field activity in those areas. If we could generate our own quantum signals and match the frequency patterns, we might be able to create a shared communication channel, Nikolai finished. Lisa, that's brilliant. But we need to get close to the entity to establish the connection. I'll go, Captain Rodriguez volunteered. No, this is my sphere, my responsibility. Besides, I've already been exposed to its influence once. I might have some resistance, or it might recognize you. Dr. Chen pointed out. That could be either helpful or catastrophic. Nikolai was quiet for a moment, weighing the risks. The evacuation was proceeding, but slowly. At the current rate, it would take 18 hours to remove everyone from the sphere. The entity's consumption rate suggested it would have absorbed 15% of the sphere's total output by then, enough energy to power its expansion beyond the sphere. We don't have a choice, he decided. If we can't establish communication, our only option will be to destroy the sphere entirely. Destroy it. Marcus looked horrified. Nikolai, the resources invested in this project are meaningless if the entity escapes and begins consuming other star systems. Marcus, I need you to prepare the sphere's self-destruct protocols. We don't have self-destruct protocols. Then we need to create them. If communication fails, we'll need to collapse the sphere into Eleanor 9. The gravitational forces should be enough to contain the entity and kill everyone still on board, Captain Rodriguez added grimly. Which is why we need to establish communication. Lisa, how long do you need to modify a quantum transmitter for interdimensional communication? 6 hours. Maybe 7 if we're lucky. You have 4 hours. After that, we begin collapse procedures. As Dr. Park raced to modify the quantum communication equipment, Nikolai prepared for what might be humanity's first conversation with a multidimensional entity. The stakes couldn't be higher. Successful communication might save both the sphere and the entity, while failure would require him to destroy the greatest achievement in human history. Either way, the next few hours would determine the fate of both species.